So in this video, we're looking at how you install windows into a wood fibre insulated timber frame, and starting with installing the wood fibre boards. We're going to put those around the window, noticing that each board in the corners is actually a full board, so there aren't any vertical or horizontal joints in the corners of the opening. The fixings are installed, and as soon as that's done, you want to install the Ampicol sill skin membrane to the sills so that they're protected from the rain and you don't get rain penetrating into the boards or into the frame on the sills. Next, you apply the Ampicol Compromax around the perimeter of the window, and do this just before you actually install the windows. Take your window frame and wrap the Ampicol Fenax DS3070 tape. You want one piece facing inwards and one piece facing outwards, and that's to seal the window frame into the opening so that it's airtight and watertight once it's installed. Onto the front of the sealskin, put some more Fenax tape, which allows the render to bond to it, and then run the Compromax tape across the sill and install your sills. Make sure you've got end caps on the sills so that you can then apply the Compromax tape to the end cap around the jambs and the heads of the windows. And then when you install your reveal boards, you've got a really good weather-tight compression fitting there between the edge of the reveal board and the Compromax tape. Looking at that in section, then you can see the Fenax tape on the sill that's bonded down to the sill skin on the inside and on the outside. And again, you want to fall on that sill, so any water is falling towards the outside. And the Fenax on the outside of the sill skin there allows the render to stick to the surface. At the head, you can see both pieces of Fenax bonded to the timber frame and to the wood fibre board, making that weathertight and airtight seal. So on to installing the beads. Take your APU window sealing beads and leave them with the yellow piece facing towards the interior of the window opening, so towards the glass. Peel off the self-adhesive strip and stick them to the surface of the window. You want to do the sides first and then the head, and you can miter the corners or you can do a lap joint in the corners. Once those are in, apply a thin layer of render to the mesh, and they are then held in there permanently. Next, take your 3D corner reinforcement beads and install those into the corners, trimming them to the right depth. And again, bonding them in place with a thin layer of render. Next, take your corner beads, and you want to make sure you've got around about 100mm overlap, if possible, between each layer of mesh. So trim them if the window reveal is less than 100mm, but if it's more than 100mm deep, then obviously you don't need to. Install those with the 150mm piece over the front face of the opening. Again, heads and jambs, and put a thin layer of render onto that to hold those in place too. Once all that's in place, you can apply your render to the facade and comb it over with a notch trowel. And whilst it's still wet, take your fiberglass mesh and trowel that into the wet plaster. You can either apply a very thin layer over the top, or you can just trowel the mesh until it disappears into the plaster render, and that's that coat done. Finally, before you finish, whilst the plaster's still wet again, put the arrow-shaped mesh into the corners of the openings, into all four corners of windows and just the heads of doors. And again, small amount of render and trowel those in. And finally, you can apply your primer and silicone finish. The yellow pieces on the APU beads, sealing beads in the windows, just snap off and leave a nice tidy rendered edge.